In 1874, Francis Webb introduced his Precursor class. In 1896, they were all gone. Today, we're talking about Whale's Precursors, which came after them. Throughout the second half of the 19th century, Francis Webb built many compound locomotives, many of which weren't very successful, and they came with a higher maintenance cost. His successor, George Whale, favored a more conventional design, aiming to phase out the old compounds. Whale looked to Webb's own improved precedent class. These were very successful locomotives and made record runs during the race to the north. Strong, fast, and reliable performers, Whale chose to base his new express engines off of these. You may think there'd be a big list of similarities, though, but these engines were very different. The Precursors had four-wheeled leading bogies, a larger boiler rated 25 psi higher, larger cylinders, almost double the tractive effort, and nearly double the weight. It seems to me that Whale looked at everything that made the improved precedents great and did more of that. Most interesting difference, however, is that the Precursor used Joy valve gear, while the improved precedent used Allen valve gear. I feel like the one thing I wouldn't change from a wildly successful engine is the valve gear, but I'm also not the most knowledgeable person. I'm missing something, I imagine. The first of these new engines was delivered in 1904, and they were not the great success that Whale was hoping for. They weren't terrible, of course, but they were awkward to drive and had a hard time keeping time on lines with heavier gradients. The Precursors were designed to eliminate double heading on expresses, and they could do this on parts of the network, but where there was steep hills, a new class of engine was needed to take over, resulting in the experiment class. Even then, in the north of the railway's territory, fast schedules and heavy trains made double heading necessary. At this time, the 460 was only just becoming a thing. The Precursors weren't anything special, they were only another step in the development of the 440. The George V class was basically a superheated Precursors, a stronger version of the class. Seeing the advantages of this, the LMS did superheat several of the Precursors, and between 1927 and 1935, the saturated engines were withdrawn. Back in 1906, seeing his Precursors being generally successful, George Whale slapped side tanks and a bunker on it, called it a suburban tank engine. They were rather heavy for tank engines, coming in at around 74 tons. That's actually heavier than the Southern Railway Z class. However, the Precursor tanks had less power than the Precursors themselves. The saturated Precursors had 18,200 pound-feet of tractive effort, 20,600 when superheated. The engine itself weighing in at just under 60 tons. At 74 tons, the Precursor tanks had 15,000 pounds of tractive effort. While it makes them both too heavy to run on some branch lines and weaker than a standard 2 tank, they would have been pretty good at putting their weight down. I mean, their tanks rested just above the driving wheels. While their job was fast suburban trains, I imagine they could have tackled hills better than the Precursors did. All 50 Precursor tanks made it into LMS service, and they'd continue work as suburban tanks. The first was withdrawn in 1927, and withdrawals of the class as a whole began towards the end of 1931, the last being withdrawn in February of 1940. None were preserved. The George V class fared a little better, with 3 members making it into BR ownership. One was withdrawn immediately before a number could be allocated, and the other 2 had numbers allocated, but were withdrawn in May of the same year, not even making it a full 6 months in BR ownership. A single Precursor made it into BR, and was withdrawn in June of 1949, before its new number could be applied, outliving the 2 younger classes, if only barely. None of the 3 survived into preservation, despite totaling nearly 300 engines between them. However, there's a new build project. The George V Steam Locomotive Trust is building a new George V. Keep in mind, this isn't like a sponsored video or something. I just stumbled upon this while researching the Precursors, and I thought it'd be really cool to talk about it. The new locomotive will be number 2013, Prince George. The project began in 2012 and officially launched in 2014. At the launch event, they proved they meant business by revealing a painted and lined cab and splasher assembly, as well as a number and nameplates. As shown on their website, they've got a complete smoke box with handrails and chimney. They've made parts of the frames and are preparing to cast the bogie wheels. Most recently, they made the cab footsteps and put those on the engine. They have made enough progress to be sure that they are completely serious about this. Google George V Steam Locomotive Trust. Their website should be the top result. There you can follow their progress, see what's up with the people involved, and find out how you can help. They have a news section on their site that seems to be updated at least once a month. In reading their website, they're also making modifications to the design to make it more reliable and more compliant with modern safety standards. I haven't touched on everything that the Trust has got done, and you can learn more about the George V class on their website than I could elsewhere, apparently. I'll try to remember to put the link to the site in the pinned comment. The site should also be on screen everywhere for this second half of the video, you know. The Trust's goals are made clear on the site as well, so check it out if that sort of thing gets your attention. If nothing else, it's an excellent read. There's hope for these engines yet, and we may have the chance to see one run again within a decade. I couldn't find a George V class on the train's download station, and there's not a huge amount of unique footage in this video. I hope the visuals were interesting enough to keep you here. Also, I know the routes I use are entirely unrelated to the locomotives. There isn't a lot I can do about it right now, so you'll probably see the Settle-in-Carlisle route used incorrectly a lot, at least until I make my own routes. Hope to see y'all in the comments here, in one of my past videos, or in next week's video. Same things as usual. Thanks for watching.